America where like, let half the teams into the playoffs and then we have just crazy games.
This is why baseball is the best, because you have a long season, but it really matters because not half the teams get to go to the playoffs. Anyway.
I'm gonna field arguments about baseball being interesting. Hello, everybody. I'm Cody Troyer.
And I'm Brent Gaisford.
And we are the Hugonauts.
This week, we're talking about the incredible dystopian classic, A Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess. So super duper excited about this one. We both love it desperately. Also, there's stuff that it's so repulsive also. It's just the craziest book. So excited to talk about it.
Yes, and that's why we're also dressed in the height of fashion.
Oh yes, the height of fashion.
The height. This novel was published in 1962. It's about 352 pages or 8 hours on audiobook. And next episode, we are doing our book club episode on Kim Stanley Robinson's Ministry for the Future. If you want to come chat on the book club, we will be on Discord chatting about it about a week before the episode comes out. So come chat.
Yeah, January 1st. Yeah, come by. Did the internet tell you this was 352 pages?
Yeah, I mean, it had a lot of different numbers.
Dude, publishing, this is why the audiobook length is legit. My physical copy is 211 pages. That's so different. That's like, anyway. Okay.
Yeah, it said one of them was 152, one of the hardcovers. So, we just report what we find.
This episode is sponsored by I Am Machine by Lex van der Ploeg. I Am Machine is about fundamental principles of the universe, the origins of life, and free will.
The novel follows an alien, Ramona Blackhole, as she explores life on Earth and tries to understand its connection to life across the universe. Her realizations about evolution, the mysterious forces behind our origins and history, and the ongoing control of human behavior are truly wild.
I'm Machine is available on Kindle and paperback at the link in the episode notes.
All right, Brent, so what happens in A Clockwork Orange?
A Clockwork Orange follows Alex, our humble narrator, as he often describes himself, a young villain who's the leader of a gang of 4 who are terrorizing the populace every night, committing like unspeakable acts of violence. And it's about what happens when the state tries to reform him. Yeah, so that's our setup. Yeah, what did you think of it?
I gave it a 5 out of 5. Largely on the merits of it's an incredibly disturbing story, but one of the best literary voices I've ever read in Alex. Such an immersive narrator.
I'm also going to give it a 5. The first few chapters are brutally violent and really hard to deal with, but I think it was worth pushing through for me because it's just maybe the best book I've ever read about like crime and punishment, which I also love Crime and Punishment, but that book is not really about crime and punishment. Anyway, and yeah, you're totally right.
Prisoner
at the language.
reform.
Yeah, the made up language in this is unbelievable. I can't believe what he pulled off. So yeah, I just loved it. I can't stop thinking about it.
And in reference to both of our summaries, just wanted to put a trigger warning on this one for sexual assault and regular assault toward the beginning of the book.
Yeah, it's very, very explicit and violent and tough to read. Yeah. So
right. Serves a purpose, but we'll get to that. Okay, let's jump in. The locations and the world are fabulous. It's no surprise that Kubrick wanted to get his little greasy paws on this one and make it a cool version on film. But like just even the opening scene, the milk bar, and describing the milk bar and the types of drugged up milk. It's just so incredible.
Yeah, it's super good. Yeah, the milk bar is one of the best places I've ever seen. It's like just such a weird den of iniquity. And like it also does such a good job of bringing home like these are children. They're like children who are taking these drugs that are very serious drugs and then going and committing these unspeakable acts of violence. But at the end of the day, they are kids who are at the age that they should be drinking milk. It's like, and he somehow nails all that in this one weird place while these drugged out people drinking spiked milk. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. And the rest of the world is cool. You know, it's a good standard, not standard, but it is a type of dystopian world that we recognize from other things. Everyone has to work. He has a sad apartment block with his parents. But I think the difference here that is interesting being the power that adolescents have. It's like a hyper realization of if adolescents had the autonomy they wanted, because adolescents can be, you know, this violent and this self-absorbed, but if they also had the power to, you know, scare their parents and scare the rest of the populace, and actually act on it, it's a frightening prospect, really.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that's the twist of this dystopian state. Everyone has to work, and there's some standard dystopian stuff, but this idea that like it's deeply unsafe and that like criminals own the night is not something I've seen in any other. There's some shades of like Parable of the Sower in there, I guess, but anyway, it feels pretty different, and that's really what this book is about: is like the criminals and how we as society deal with that.
Yes, exactly. And okay, the thing we both brought up, the language, the narrator's voice. Let's just get right into it, because there's so many. Can I just list you some words,
please,
real quick? These are the ones I wrote down. A Gulliver for head. That's your head. A droog is a friend. Malenki is a little, like a little bit. Malenki bit. Horror show means good. Slovos are words, and viding is seeing. And those are the ones that I just wrote down. But I think what Burgess does so well in the text is its seamless integration. Like you're feeling the world through these words. But he's also not saying every time he says a new crazy word, he's not telling you what it means. The narrator's just saying it. And they're close enough to real words, or they're used in contextually so well that your brain just understands what they mean automatically. It's incredible writing.
And I think over time, as the novel goes on, he like leans into it more also. He like knows that you have learned it. Like the way that he as a writer was able to gear and like think as the reader is unbelievable. I truly can't believe he pulled this off. And
totally.
Yeah.
Like a good video game intro or something where you're like learning the controls seamlessly, and they teach you in a way that you don't notice you're learning it.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Keep stacking on the harder stuff. Yeah, and so you don't feel like a domeless wonder boy, for example.
That was one of my favorite quotes. Yeah, Dim said nothing for fear of being called a domeless wonder boy. It's like, yeah, all right, well, we totally understand what that means.
I think the language also makes it sound so silly. It makes the violence, at the same time, it makes it more pop out at the page more, but also makes it a little more tolerable. I don't really know how to justify those two things, but they felt true to my experience. Like,
yeah, that's true. The sexual assault chapter, I still just like couldn't. I like had to stop reading like twice to finish that chapter. I think you're right that the language blunts it, but like that was also just like, oof, man. Even with some blunting, that was just like not. It was so hard to read. They're so bad. Anyway,
did you read it? Yeah. I kind of just like floated my brain off during the audiobook part of that.
Oh, just like stop
all
listening.
Right, this happens. Yeah, just like paid a little less attention.
Yeah,
but
for sure. Yeah. Speaking of, hold on though. Look how weird this cover is. Like, why is this the cover of this famous book? I get the guy screaming, but like. But then it's like they didn't even Photoshop it at all. There's just flames on top. I don't get it. What is this?
I don't know. That's a choice for sure. But also, like many of those novels, it's like one of 7 million covers that it's been published under.
Yeah, but like someone got paid to make this. This is like, I feel like this is like my Papyrus with the Avatar logo. Like this is like a professional graphic designer made this. Like what? How? Anyway,
I don't know. I guess they had to have the white in there to like tease the movie. which we'll talk about the movie, but in post spoilers. So
I agree. Yeah, that's the right spot for that.
It fits nicely there. So the
hold on.
language.
I want to bring.
Go ahead.
Yes, there's one more thing I want to talk about with the language. He did something else with this that I think is so cool. At one point, two of the characters who are not like youths, they're talking to each other about the slang, about NADSAT, and it's his way of showing us, the reader, where this thing comes from, but he does it inside the narrative. So it's like meta, but he didn't break the fourth wall at all because it's two characters talking to each other about it. I thought it was so cool. Anyway, basically they say like, oh, it's a lot of these words have Slavic roots, and they're purporting it's because like the Soviet Union basically is like sending propaganda into Britain and it's working on the youth. And so they're like picking up these Slavic words and using them. And I just thought it was such a cool way to show us where this, like literally show us where it came from. I guess he is telling us, but he's like telling you without having to break the narrative. It was just, I thought it was so cool. Yeah,
it was just an incredible way to drive that in there. I totally agree. And I think, it's tough to talk about this novel pre-spoilers in the purest sense, unfortunately. So it's going to be a long post-spoilers episode. We're going to move there soon. But I think that, the point of this book is not what happens in the plot. So you could probably keep listening unless you really want to keep it pure. But ultimately, I mean, reasons to read are the narrator's voice and also its fascinating conclusions about crime and punishment, and watching the story of a character who you despise and pity, and you feel a lot of emotions for the narrator. And I think Burgess just brings that all together really nicely in a very interesting world.
Yeah, for sure. I have one other thing we could do pre-spoilers.
What's that?
You always hate it in science fiction when they're listening to classical music, and Alex, it's like a big part of his personality is that he loves classical music, but I actually liked it. And I thought it was like,
I did too this time.
He pulled it off.
I don't know. Okay. I don't know if it's because, let me try to self-analyze. First of all, British, I don't know, it works for me better in that context for no reason. Second of all, I think it feels, it's a future. It's supposed to be the future in the 1960s, but it feels dated still. Like, it doesn't feel like they're ahead of us in technology or anything like that. It feels like its own world, so it has its own rules. Yeah, I don't know. It just worked for me in terms of what music did to Alex and how it evoked his passions. I think I believed it.
Yeah, I did character. Too. Yeah, it wasn't just like in passing. It was like, oh yeah, and he threw on some Bach. It was like really about how it made him feel, and it was like a legit part of his characterization and his character. And yeah, it worked for me too. It was the one thing he had that even when he was a horrible villain, like made him seem human.
Right. Yeah. Right. It's just hilarious to hear him, talking in these slang words about the ninth. Oh, the second movement of the ninth. Like, it's a funny thing to hear a kid talking about. Okay. Recommended books, Brent?
Before we get into recommended books, we just want to give another quick shout out to our episode sponsor, I Am Machine by Lex van der Ploeg. I Am Machine explores the origins of life through the eyes of an alien visitor and is available at the link in the episode notes. Okay, Cody, what'd you think? Right. First recommended book.
That's going to be Lord of the Flies by William Goulding, which is, it's hard to pick recommended books for Clockwork Orange. There's really nothing like a Clockwork Orange. But Lord of the Flies has children being violent and terrible, and showing what society run amok can be. So, and it's a book taught in maybe middle school, high school, whatever, but it's worth a read and revisit. It's a great novel.
Yeah, I like that one. I hadn't thought of it, but I think it's really good. I think it's a really good pick. I'm going to go with The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. For two reasons. I think everyone should read something by Oscar Wilde because he's freaking a genius. And number two, that book is a little slow at the beginning, but
Yeah.
such an interesting dive into what being evil like does to you and how that reflects upon you and how you become your actions. And it's just extremely well done. And he also has some incredible lines that are very Oscar Wilde about that I just will never forget, about how it's like worse to be boring than it is to be evil. And I don't know that I agree with that, but it's really interesting.
Yeah. Okay. And then finally, 1984. I mean, British dystopia. How could we not?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's a lot of like bleak grayness in both novels that feels very familiar. Yes.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Okay. Post spoilers. Brent, why don't you just give us, I tried to invent my own language. It didn't work. It was nonsense. I didn't do as good of a job as Burgess. Why don't you give us a summary of what happens in the rest?
So Alex and his droogs get caught. He actually kills an elderly woman as they're breaking into her house. He gets caught by the police, thrown in jail. In jail, it's brutally overcrowded, and he ends up killing a guy who tries to rape him in jail. And so to punish him, they decide to make him the first patient of Ludovico's treatment, where they hold his eyes open, make him watch a bunch of really brutal stuff while they play classical music, and basically resensitize him so he literally cannot commit violence.
They break his brain so that when he tries to hit somebody, he imagines doing it and it makes him physically ill and he collapses in vomiting, nausea, fits. And also when he hears music, which is his favorite thing. Yep. So they destroy the only worthwhile thing about himself and also remove his will to commit violence.
Yeah, and that's really like what matters in terms of the action. He tries to commit, he gets sort of like used as a political pawn. He tries to commit suicide. They end up undoing the treatment. And then in the last chapter, which I think we'll talk more about, maybe we'll leave that. The last chapter sort of is interesting, but so that's kind of the quick hits of the back half.
Okay, so your first question here, which I think is a great place to start, was justice done for his victims, and what is the purpose of criminal justice reform?
Yeah, I'm so curious to hear what let's imagine they hadn't undone Ludovico's treatment on him. They had left him in that state where he was physically incapable of doing violence. Do you think if the woman he raped and killed, and her partner, the old woman he killed, all these people that he beat to almost to death, them and all their loved ones, like, was justice done to them? He ended up in jail for a couple of months effectively and then was released. Regardless of the treatment they did to him, does that feel like justice for his victims?
I don't know that I have like a real hard opinion on those philosophies. I can generally be kind of like swayed either way by either narrative on that stuff. 'Cause I think it's like really, really hard question, right? Like is reform the point? Is the punishment the point? I guess I'm on the side of reform always being the point, but the interesting question that this novel raises is, if the reform is to fix the human by taking away their free will, can you have really reformed them if they don't have are they good if they don't have the choice for violence, even if that's what they would select if they could?
This novel is so interesting. There's so many follow-up questions I have, but let me limit myself to, so the treatment they do on him here is pretty brutal. But let's imagine that it wasn't, right? And that instead of forcing him to watch Holocaust videos for 2 weeks or whatever it was, instead They had him meet with a therapist and take a bunch of mood stabilizing drugs and do CBT and like do modern mental health treatment stuff for, let's say, 2 years. And then at the end of that, he doesn't want to do violence anymore. Why haven't we also like taken away his free will in that case? Why is that different, I guess, is my question.
I suppose because he's choosing to become a new person instead of it being forced upon him. Like, he does try to commit violence when he gets back out of jail several times, right? But it makes him physically nauseous, and he's overtaken by, he can't stand up to his parents unfairly. They're so mistreated, but he can't do that. He can't stand up to his friends who've now become police people. And yeah, it's just a choice taken instead of path granted or a path proffered.
Yeah, I guess what feels interesting to me is that it doesn't feel like a choice. It kind of doesn't feel like a choice either way.
I mean, you're asking like a koan, like a Buddhist koan. You're asking like a paradoxical question almost, right? Like if you're splitting hairs that far down, then you can never, like, I can't really answer your question.
Yeah, well,
right?
and
like when is choice a choice? I mean,
he chose to do Ludovico's
Peter,
treatment, right?
As Peter Watts would, as we know, Peter Watts would argue, no humans have free will, just based on the argument of our biology. So it's up to the the individual and like the way you semantically define that.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah,
What do you think? How would you answer that question?
I think if you desire to commit rape and murder, then we're gonna take that out of you. Sorry.
Okay.
You don't get to, you're not allowed to make that choice. That's the rule of being in the society that we have made. And so regardless of your desire, like, we are going to, like, yes, we will take that from you. You want to keep that and that's core to who you are. We do not accept that. Like, I'm saying, like, that what he,
you kind of put me in an awkward situation because you asked me a different question.
Well,
I feel like I agree with that. I like that reasoning. I thought you were asking like, when is choice?
Well, I kind of am, right? Because the way Burgess is sort of phrasing this, or the way the argument of the book feels, is that like they have taken that choice away from him, and therefore he's not a human anymore. He's a Clockwork Orange, and to do that to someone is unhuman. And I'm sort of the opinion, it feels to me like we should take that choice away from him.
Yeah. Okay.
The way that it was done was itself violent, but I don't know that we need to have people who feel like they're free to do that.
You're saying is if the method was less dehumanizing, then it's good. You're just
we
fixing.
Attempt to do that already. Yeah.
We're just, I see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
It's definitely it's a really interesting question, and I think the method has everything to do with it, really, which is, and also the point of view, like the perspective, right? We're with the narrator, so you're seeing that happen to him and you're saying, oh my God, this is horrifying. But if your point of view was, say, the victims, you're saying, well, obviously we should do that. Fix them into that's easy. If you could do it mechanically, then we're done here.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the other thing that the book made me think about a lot is that I feel like the criminal justice system is trying to do three things. One of them is just removing a person who is dangerous from society so they cannot do dangerous things. If somebody's, whatever, a pedophile or a murderer, if they're in jail, then they can't do pedophilia or murder.
That's your mechanical solution.
Yeah, so that's one thing. And that is not in conflict with the next two. But the next two do feel like they're fundamentally in conflict. One is provide justice to the victims, which is, I think, important for a bunch of reasons, but one of them is so that people don't feel like they have to take justice into their own hands, right? One of the reasons Afghanistan is such a bad place is that they have this like blood feuds because there's no state to provide justice. And so somebody from that family killed somebody from your family, so you kill them back. I mean, this is how this happens in gangs. This is how most of our murders in the United States happen as well, because our police aren't successfully solving crimes. And so people feel like, hey, my friend got killed, I need to take justice into my own hands. So anyway, if you don't feel like the state is providing you as a victim with justice, then you will do it yourself, and that's very bad. So anyway, there's justice for victims, which sort of necessarily means it needs to be bad and vindictive for them to feel like it's right. But then the third thing is reform. And it feels like the vindictiveness of like justice for the victims and reform are directly contradictory aims. And so, yeah, I just don't know really, I don't have a solution coming out of this.
But again, I mean, you're introducing things that have so many contextual factors, right? Like is what if justice for that victim is reform? What if that person is a person who wants to forgive, and it's depending on the crime, but wants to forgive and wants reform to happen and believes in that? What if the person is somebody who's like, the only thing that's a punishment for someone is to keep that person in solitary confinement and keep them alive as long as possible? What if, everyone has a different idea of how you would apply justice. And I think overall, I think that's why reform is more appealing to me personally. It's just better overall if you have people who can be fixed, whatever word you want to use there, who can reform and be contributing members of society once again, instead of costing society money or pain.
I think that's an interesting point. I mean, right now, I don't think our justice system has a lot of that in it. Like the victims or the victim's family, like I don't know that they actually really get a lot of say in degrees of punishment. But you're making an interesting point that, maybe that would actually be kind of a good thing. That seems fair to me, honestly.
Like I guess I'm making a loose argument for its utilitarian, like from a utilitarian point of view. Not that that's the right one, but on paper, do the math. Is that better for everybody? Yeah.
Well, let me ask you one that always like gets my blood boiling. Do you remember in this would have been like 2012? There was that horrible mass shooting in Norway. That guy killed like 70 children on that island. Anyway, fairly frequently on social media, I will see photos of the jail cell that he's held in, the jail cell, quote unquote. And it's like a really nice apartment. And he has like TV and video games and can read whatever he wants. And it's like, it just feels so wrong to me that that's what's happening to that person who did that. Like, I want that dude to have to try to like eat rats to survive. And like, if he doesn't make it, I don't really care. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like
I guess maybe it comes back to something that I reference constantly, the Supreme Court justice, or the Supreme Court definition of pornography. When you see it, like that, I don't know what justice is, and better minds than mine have tried, and we try and fail all the time, but I know that sounds wrong.
Yeah, and I think you're really onto something with that idea about like, what does justice to a particular, like what does justice mean to a particular victim? I think is a really interesting idea. Anyway, this is all just like, obviously we're just shooting the shit, but
we're technically not off. We're technically not off topic, but
I don't think we are. That's what this book is about.
Yeah, no, it really is. And it brings up a lot of interesting, I mean, like all great novels, like it's just so rich with things to think about, the ways to apply it to our own world, like we're talking about with criminal justice, but also just is interesting to be in, and a really like rich experience.
Yeah, to bring
because
that
of the
back.
writing. Yeah,
to bring it back. Should we talk about the
Kubrick?
No,
the Kubrick
I was
and
going
the
to say
American version.
I was going to say the Survivor, the the woman that they raped, her husband,
Oh,
who is
yeah.
he's the surviving victim, like this hypothetical person that we're talking about. This happens in the book, right? He gets raped in the small town that they committed this brutal rape and murder by his former friends, who are the police officers now. They take him out into the countryside and rape him.
After he's out of prison.
After he's out of prison. And it's in that same small town where he did the crime. And he's like wandering through the town, goes and knocks on a random door, and it's the same door that they broke into and did this horrible crime. And then the husband of the wife who they raped and murdered, like, takes them in. And
Well, it takes him in, yeah.
takes him in. Yeah, it's crazy.
It is. I felt like that was maybe one of the weaker narrative points in the book, because it did make, at first it made a really interesting point about reform and forgiveness. But then he kind of gets used by the friends of the guy, because the guy is writing against the Clockwork Orange experiment, how bad it is. And so that his friends are in politics and they use him as an example. They use Alex as an example.
Yeah, they're trying to vote out this government.
Right. And then the guy finds out that Alex was the dude who broke into his house, and that's why his wife's dead. So he gets pissed, but then the friends have to remove him from the equation for their own gain. So there, you don't really get a resolution of the, like,
Well, I liked
what is
though.
forgiveness.
Well, I liked that. Well, I think that guy's answer as the victim is like, he does not choose to forgive, and he doesn't feel like Alex got punished enough. He's back out of jail like 3 months later.
That's true. I suppose that's true. He's mad about it, even though he's like one of the biggest proponents of getting rid of this system. He's now, oh wait, this is what happened to me. Now I feel differently about it. I suppose you're right. I didn't see enough of that on the page, right? Like,
yeah, it did feel like that he kind of, it like got interesting. That guy kind of just disappeared. I agree with you.
Yeah. And then Alex, of course, gets changed back, and then he tries to be bad again. And okay, now let's talk about the ending, because this is really interesting. It's all in the foreword that's written by the author, by Anthony Burgess, and he talks about how in the American publication of the novel, which is also the version that the Kubrick film is based on, they lop off the denouement. They lop off the last chapter that is about Alex becoming an adult and deciding he doesn't want to be violent anymore and he wants a family. And so the movie ends with him back in the milk bar, basically the same shot.
It's just the chapter
that it opens with.
Yeah, it just ended. Yeah, one chapter earlier.
Right, and so it ends in this way of, oh, we tried all of this and we're right back at the beginning. It was cruel how they tried to reform him, but now that they turned him back, he's just going back to his old ways. And I guess the American editor was like, you could never sell the chapter about him finally growing up in America. People want a crazier ending. And I guess Kubrick agreed. But so many people are walking around thinking that's what this original story of Clockwork Orange is the message is. It wildly changes the message to just lose the last chapter. The message being the cycle will not change unless we force these people to undergo some sort of severe restructuring, and we don't reverse it. They're just going to end up right back where they were. Where in the book, Burgess's point was to try to say maybe people can also just grow up. Though I will say, I did think the ending was a little bit weak. So
yeah, I was going to say, which ending do you like more? Yeah, which do you prefer?
I think the Kubrickian ending it just sticks with you more, right? An ending like that is way more chilling. I'm not sure that the message is as good. I like the Burgess message that someone can grow out of violence and selfishness naturally as they become an adult and desire family and personal growth and growth in one's passions, to overcome the just like body rage selfishness of adolescence. But I don't know that, I just don't think he landed the ship that well. So I'm also wondering if the editor was just like, I get the point, but you just didn't do it that well, and it's way more exciting this other way.
Yeah, I think I mean, editors are trying to sell stuff. This is a case where I think I'm with you. I'm with the editors. I'm with Kubrick. I think it's much more interesting and compelling, a chapter shorter. And I also kind of felt like it let him off the hook. It was like, oh, well, now that he's 25, he decides he wants to have a kid. So it's fine. It's cool. He did that stuff.
Right.
And it's like, no, sorry. It's not.
That's the part that I didn't. He's 18 when he sees his old friend with a wife,
right.
and they have a kid. And he's like, he just sees them in a restaurant, and he's like, I'm 18 now. I should have a kid. And that's the part that's like, okay, you do what? So I think the message would have been cool, and could have been cooler than the movie ending, but it just didn't feel believable, is why.
Yeah.
You liked the more extreme one too.
I like the Kubrick version too. Yeah.
We have a lot of that. There's that difference in. I think about this a lot with the British American divide. One of the analogies that always pops into my head is how the Premier League works, where they just have a season with games, and whoever has the most points at the end wins. It's very chess-like. And it's very, and then in America, we're like, let half the teams into the playoffs, and then we have just crazy games where a terrible team beats a great team, and it's so much more exciting that way. And it's a funny cultural difference, and it makes sense in this novel.
Oh, well, no, but see, this is why baseball is the best, because you have a long season, but it really matters because not half the teams get to go to the playoffs. Anyway, okay.
I'm going to field arguments about baseball being interesting tonight. Sorry, Brett.
I was going to say, I might have wandered off the reservation now.
Anyways, this book obviously has so much philosophy, interesting thinking, is such a crazy experience if you can get through the brutality of it. But the brutality is, part of it's important to the experience. And I'm really excited to talk about Ministry Malenki of the Future, Ministry for the Future by KSR next time.
Yeah, me too. I will see you then.
All right, later, man.
Keep reading, everybody.
Bye.